Remembrance and love, how these two are expressions of each other and the context for our spiritual practice.
Well, remembrance and love. I think love is the guiding force behind remembering someone. Even when you hate someone, rather, you remember that person so often. So the remembrance of beloved has a different level of vibrations in your heart.
So would you say this remembrance of God or of the beloved is something that would accelerate one's spiritual journey?
Definitely. I mean, why would you remember someone with whom you do not want to merge?
Is there a way that you can share that can help people to cultivate this?
It's very easy. It's very, very easy. When you remember someone, why would you remember that person or that particular moment? So now, how does it apply in a spiritual realm? When we meditate, for example, and arrive at a certain spiritual state, you are overwhelmed by that particular spiritual state and say, wow, do I deserve this?
Babuji has once mentioned that remembrance is capable of clearing everything from someone's path, and it keeps that person in constant charge of the divine. Is this something that happens only after a certain point?
So here there are three questions here. One is removal of unnecessary. Second is infusing with charge. And third question is, when does remembrance truly begin? Okay.
Meditation is the mother of remembrance.
It was a famous statement by Babaji Maharaj that meditation is the mother of constant remembrance. And I do appreciate this statement because it explains the entire essence of our practice, spiritual practice.
If there is ever a time when the master himself would ever be remembering his own disciple, if anyone would ever come to that point.
So it's very simple, I think. It's very simple.
Remembrance and love. So I wanted to ask you some questions about how these two are expressions of each other and the context for our spiritual practice.
Well, remembrance and love. I think love is the guiding force behind remembering someone. Even when you hate someone, rather, you remember that person so often. So the remembrance of beloved has a different level of vibrations in your heart. It's almost like you are in state of absorbency while thinking of that person. I'm deliberately using this word thinking, though there is a vast difference between thinking and remembering. Thinking is about here, it's your head, your mind especially. But remembrance is from the heart. When you think, let's for example, a sloka from Gita, you are thinking on a particular sloka. What does Lord Krishna mean to say, Sarva Dharman Parityajya Mamekam Saranam Vraja? So you keep thinking, contemplating, what is he trying to convey to me? So there's a mind involvement. But when you are using the same sloka, same verse, Sarva Dharman Parityajya, you are now going into a different dimension when you remember Krishna, all these verse. It is felt in your heart.
Rather than
Analyzing, you feel the presence. You begin to have some shift in your awareness because of this remembrance. So, I would say love is the product and remembrance is the beginning of the thing, see, according to Babuji Maharaj. Because when you reverse this equation, when you love someone, you remember. God being unknown entity, we don't know how to love. So we begin to remember and end up with
love
loving.
comes.
Yeah.
So would you say this is something, this remembrance of God or of the beloved, is something that would accelerate one's spiritual journey?
Definitely. I mean, why would you remember someone with whom you do not want to merge or you do not want to become one with? So remembrance is a great catalyst.
Is there a way that you can share that can help people to cultivate this?
It's very easy. It's very, very easy. For example, when you remember someone, why would you remember that person or that particular moment? It strikes your heart so strikingly or lovingly. You're so impressed by that event or by that person. You remain grateful. So now, how does it apply in a spiritual realm? When we meditate, for example, and arrive at a certain spiritual state, you are overwhelmed by that particular spiritual state and say, wow, do I deserve this? A kind of a gratefulness begins in your heart. And then, because of this gratefulness, you start wondering about who is this giver, be it your guru or be it God. Then you begin to think, begin to remember, and then you remain absorbed in remembrance with gratefulness. So there is incremental refinedness in your remembrance.
So even meditating on this person, on the guru, that will also help.
Yes.
Okay. So I wanted to ask also about other traditions. So for example, in Sufism, they have something that they call zikr or dhikr, I think. And I'm wondering if this is the same thing or similar to what
That's
we call as
exactly
constant
same.
remembrance.
It's the same thing.
Okay.
It's just a different word.
Okay. But it is there in
It's
other
a
traditions.
constant remembrance means it's a continuous remembrance of the beloved. And any moment that is lost without remembering, often they regret that how did I forget my lover or my beloved.
Babuji has once mentioned that remembrance is capable of clearing everything from someone's path, and it keeps that person in constant charge of the divine. So is this something that happens only after a certain point or from the beginning of one's yatra?
So here there are three questions here. One is removal of unnecessary. Second is infusing with charge. And third question is, when does remembrance truly begin? Okay. Whenever we remember, we are immediately in osmosis with that personality. And we begin to draw grace or the power or the love transmitted from such a person into our heart. So that sort of remembrance where you are imbued with divinity constantly. This is a love-filled invitation. There is the absolute saranagati. It's not that you have surrendered in a defeated way. No. You have lovingly surrendered to your beloved, knowing well, with full trust and respect. As far as cleaning goes, that what sort of things gets cleaned up? Whenever you remember such a great personalities like gurus and or God or Krishna or prophets, peace be upon him, there is immediate shift in our awareness. Whenever we remember such great personalities, your heart moves tremendously, and if you are about to do the wrong thing, it will prevent you. How can I do this while I'm also thinking of my beloved? If you are still interested in doing things despite of remembering, that means you don't have true love. It's like husband and wife. You see, this relationship breakup is only because of this lack of trust. Anyway, when it comes to remembering, slowly and slowly as we develop this ability to remain in osmosis through remembrance, there will be a qualitative change in us. In chemistry or in physics, we have this osmosis process also well explained. Even in biology and physiology, without osmosis, We just cannot exist at a physiological level. Similarly, at a psychological, emotional, and spiritual level, there is also some level of osmosis between my subtle body and that of the universal body of God. There is osmosis. Until that moment is reached where my level of purity and his level of purity becomes equal, osmosis will continue. And that is the purpose of yoga, that is the purpose of meditation, that is the purpose of bhakti, that is the purpose of worshiping God. To trigger this osmosis and attain such a state like godliness.
So you just addressed it now already, but I just wanted to bring up one point that you had once said, is that meditation is the mother of remembrance. So can this mean that for those who've not yet made it a part of them, that through constant meditation, they can bring themselves closer to remembering the Guru in such a way that it's not a thought, but it's more a part of their being?
Yeah. It was a famous statement by Babaji Maharaj that meditation is the mother of constant remembrance. And I do appreciate this statement because it explains the entire essence of our practice, spiritual practice, whether you are following X system or Y system, but fundamentally, whoever be your guide or the entity you are worshipping, unless you become so grateful, how can you remember such a personality? And what drives this gratefulness? It's out of your own experiments with the processes they share with us, the experiments they share with us. They say, okay, meditate like this. So we go through the process and see it in our own heart, how it affects us at a consciousness level. If you like it, you become more appreciative, more grateful, and you will continue to remember. So this is why I say, and I cannot appreciate more than this, that it's a magical thing to meditate and arrive at such a refined state. Imagine for a personality like Radha. She is an epitome of remembrance. It is said that whenever she was absorbed in the remembrance of Lord Krishna, she will be so much absorbed in his remembrance. She will start Krishna, 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 and the moment comes she becomes Krishna. And finally she start reciting Radhe, Radhe, Radhe. It's like Krishna reciting Radhe once she becomes Krishna, in essence.
So I just wanted to ask you also, if there is ever a time when the master himself would ever be remembering his own disciple, if anyone would ever come to that point.
It's always the case. Masters remember individuals under many categories actually. Those who are in trouble, those who are advancing very fast and attain very high level of spirituality. So you cannot say Master does not remember you, because we all fall in that category. Either we are so advanced or we are always so needing. So, but is his remembering of his disciples is specific or by choice, or is he conscious of it? What you mean to be asking is this, that are you consciously remembering some individuals? I would say yes. There are moments when you consciously remember the people whom you have met, and so often you remember people whom you have never met also. This sounds very paradoxical, but it's a fact.
And that could be because their vibratory level has reached such a point that they are somehow able to reach you in that way. And that is why you're able to feel
both
them.
Individuals, those who need and those who do not need. They vibe. They have vibrations with the master. They are picked up somehow. But engaging your conscious mind from a master's perspective, that conscious remembering does not happen. Very rarely, if at all. The moment there is a critical moment in a disciple's life, he would pick up. For example, someone is about to die. Generally, he would notice. Someone is having some critical moment in life, like accidents. He would perhaps feel it. Some critical moments, and also more often than critical moments, are when the disciple is transitioning from one level to another level, or when that disciple is in a situation where in that person's in mind and heart is constantly calling the master with lots of love. So they also pull the attention of the master at a conscious level.
My last question was if you know of any examples of some great saints who were known to be in remembrance of their beloved, and if so, how it defined their own life and their own journey.
Well, one of the most classical, Radha, I just shared with you.
Yes.
Another is Meera,
Mirabai. Okay.
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Swami Vivekananda, our Babuji Maharaj, Lalaji Sahab, and there are many personalities, I would say, who would devote their life, their entire life, in remembrance of God. I think the examples are so many of them.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So it's very simple, I think. It's very simple.